welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Writers Toolshed. This is Richie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by a very special guest, a man who has created, I think, one of the most helpful author marketing platforms out there, StoryOrigin. It's none other than Evan Gow. Evan, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
It's great to finally catch up with you. I've been using StoryOrigin for a good while. I love it. I really admire the way you went about creating this. And recently it's launched in full form, hasn't it? Has it been going well?
Yeah, it's been going incredibly well. So the launch was back in April, so almost 3 months ago now, and definitely exceeded my expectations, and I certainly can't complain with how things have been going.
Yeah, it's fantastic. We'll talk obviously a bit more about the features and stuff like that. But like I was saying, I've been following Evan for a good while, just through him creating and developing StoryOrigin, because the way you went about it, wasn't it, was to create a sort of make it available freely in a beta form and to learn and from people's user experiences essentially. And like I was saying to you then, that just helps you create such a more higher quality product. So how did you find that experience?
I mean, I've really enjoyed being able to build something and then work really closely with all of the people that use it. I'm constantly getting emails from people, and I'm super open and transparent about everything on StoryOrigin. I mean, when you get emails, they come directly from me. So if you have issues, like I will see those, right? And so because I'm both the engineering department and the customer support team, if there's something that I'm getting emails about, I can go and I can just improve it immediately, right?
Yeah.
And so having that direct connection has been really helpful. And it's also like a lot of fun to be able to be building something with the community so closely.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, that's what I admire about the way you've gone about this. Is you clearly care and you're passionate about what you're building. You're not obviously it's nice to make money from. It's like writing, I suppose. You want to make money from your writing so you could do it full time, but at the end of the day, you want to create something quality that people love. And I get that sense from you that that's what you want to do with StoryOrigin. That you want to create something that's really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is definitely the goal. You know, the entire time it was in beta, I was just had a maniacal focus on building the best product possible, right? Because originally my goal with StoryOrigin was to, I went and I talked to a bunch of authors about what they were doing in terms of marketing and what issues they face. And they said, oh, okay, I use this one product for creating landing pages and building my mailing list. I use this other thing for finding reviewers and getting more reviews. I use this other thing for universal links. I use this other thing for newsletter swaps. I build like these group promo pages on my own website, maybe, or I use another tool for that. And so what I realized was, okay, this sounds like a huge headache. You have to have like 8 different spreadsheets and 5 different logins for a ton of different services. And then you're paying for each one of these services individually. So it gets really, really expensive really quickly.
Yeah.
And so StoryOrigin simplifies all of that stuff into one platform that's easy to use. And so you don't have to do all this constant switching between different modes for you. You can just come to one place and have sort of that home for your cross promotion and marketing. And even in sort of managing your calendar too.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what is your background? Are you sort of developer, are you?
So I don't have a degree in programming. I actually started out in finance and worked for several years in that, but my journey with tech entrepreneurship and programming started back in college. And so I started to learn to program back in college, worked for a few years, and then eventually it was sort of just time for me where I thought, okay, now's the time that I can go and I can start something. And I had a prior interest in writing. I used to write short stories back in high school. And so that's when I wanted to try and combine those interests, both for technology and then also writing and publishing. And so that's how I ended up with starting StoryOrigin in the publishing space.
Great story. And you just worked with authors that you were friendly with just to create them first ideas. What was it like sort of developing the initial product?
So right. So yeah. So the initial thing was like, if I had told authors, hey, I'm gonna build this thing and it's gonna do this. It's gonna do everything that you currently have to do across like, 8 spreadsheets and 5 logins and whatever. It's gonna do all of it. I think a lot of authors back then would have said, Evan, I don't believe you. That's probably the nicest way someone would have put it. And so originally I just started building just like the reader magnet landing pages, which reader magnet, for those of your audience that's not familiar with it, that's just like a free story that you give away when someone joins your mailing list. And then from there, it was developing the group promotions. So that you and other authors who want to promote each other, you can create a landing page that has all of your reader magnets listed on it, and then everyone promotes that single landing page.
Yeah.
And then from there is just about, I had sort of the structure in place and then working on adding each one of those additional features. So, adding the review copies after that, adding the ability to run newsletter swaps, which are direct one-to-one promotions instead of just group promotions. So StoryOrigin is sort of just I knew, because the author community is so, it's one of the interesting things about building a product in the author space is that there are a lot of Facebook groups where authors congregate, right?
Yeah.
And so you can just see, you can see what people are struggling with, and you can just like build stuff to address those issues, right?
Yeah.
So that's sort of exactly what I did. And it's not something that you can do in many other spaces, right? Like there's not a bunch of Facebook groups with like oil field engineers that are talking about what problems they face, right? But the author community is there. And so like, I can just like learn a bunch of lessons and say, oh, okay, people are struggling with this. Let me build something and make it, 10 times easier for them.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Community led.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I think you mentioned a lot of features there, which I find incredibly useful. So group promos and newsletter swaps. And like you say, what StoryOrigin does is bring authors together. And it's such a brilliant thing. I love the idea of bringing people together in different ways and helping. It's in all of their interests to work together. And if you could be the sort of link that can help them all, that's a brilliant thing to achieve, I think. So that's what I love about StoryOrigin, the group promos, the newsletter swaps. It's all ways of interacting with other authors, supporting each other, and reaching new audiences.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the great things about being an author is a lot of times you're not competing with other authors. You are sort of co-opetition, right? You're like both cooperating and they're your competition. But, if I'm let's say, I'm a fantasy writer, I'm not going to be able to produce the number of books that a fantasy reader will read in any given year, right? I can't produce 20, 30, 50 books a year. I can't entirely satiate my audience's desire for this content, right? And so by working with other authors in the times when I'm not releasing, I'm able to continue to engage my audience with, hey, here's some other books that you might like or might enjoy. And then when it comes time for me to have a new release, then they haven't forgotten who I am because I've become that sort of source of recommendations to them. And so when I say, hey, here's my new book, they were like, oh, I've enjoyed some of the other stuff that they've recommended. I read their other books before. Like, I'm definitely going to jump on this new release. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the really interesting things about being an author is like the people that you're, supposedly, are your competition. They're really not. They're they can be incredibly helpful to you just as you can be incredibly helpful to them. And everybody wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it. And that's the best way. I think people need to start getting that in their heads a bit more, and less of the sort of the trolling and the competitive talk. We all work together at the end of the day, don't we? And
Yeah.
like you say, people have been saying to me, "When's your next book coming out?" Because I've recently just released one. I haven't even started writing one yet. So
How can
exactly,
you
it's
keep
not a
up?
competition.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I love about like the newsletter swaps, because one of the challenges I've always faced when it comes to promoting your work is finding the readers in the first place. And group promos and newsletter swaps, one of the great things about StoryOrigin is that you can narrow it down by genre, so you can find the readers that you need and that you yearn for. So when I've been promoting some of my reader magnets, I've been networking with people who've got like 12,000 people on the mailing list. I mean, if only 1% click on the links, that's 100 people. It's for 120 people, isn't it? So it's an amazing way to reach new audiences and find readers that are going to be interested in your work. So yeah, it's
Without
yeah,
yeah, without having to figure out some super complicated ads dashboard and
yeah,
bidding systems and setting like minimum thresholds. And yeah, I mean, the author marketing landscape, across like advertising on Facebook or Amazon, like,
yeah,
bids are increasing with time because the market's becoming more saturated with marketing. And then like also like figuring out like their dashboards is complicated. The great
yeah,
thing about cross promotions, like group promos or newsletter swaps, is they're free, right? Like you and me agreeing to, mention each other's books in our newsletters, like that doesn't cost us anything, right?
yeah,
They're easy. It doesn't, I don't have to figure out a dashboard like I was talking about. All I have to do is like drop your book cover in the link in my newsletter. Like that's not
yeah,
particularly difficult. And then, it's targeted by genre. So I don't have to go and figure out, like targeting systems or something like that. I know I'm cross promoting my book with another fantasy author. And so I know that their audience is going to be the kind of audience that enjoys my work.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I think that's why cross promotions like the ones that you can run on StoryOrigin are, they're growing very quickly, right?
yeah,
Because there's so many upsides to it.
yeah. And one of the benefits I've noticed as well is the time saving that you get, like just from joining a few group promos and agreeing to share that a few times in the period, 3 or 4 weeks, whatever. And all the while, everyone else is sharing it, and you're getting email subscribers, and you're hardly doing anything. And it's
Yeah,
amazing. I just
right.
log into MailChimp and just see story. Like, I haven't done anything to get these, really. It's amazing. And
Right.
the integration thing as well, like what we don't like as authors, and especially if we have to work to support ourselves, we don't have that much time. So things like adding the integrations to MailChimp to make, so I don't have to manually transfer an email address to MailChimp. It's just done
Right.
on its own. It's just so efficient.
Yeah.
And yeah, was that hard to do to get those integrations to work?
Figuring out, so StoryOrigin has 9 different integrations at this point, and figuring out like the first 2 or 3, depending on what their sort of scheme was, took some time. But each additional integration from there was easier to set up because I could look back and say, oh, okay, this one's similar to the way that this other one does it. I'll just do it the same way.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, at first adding those was took a decent amount of time, and then adding new ones from there took less time.
Yeah, that it all just blows me away how programming works. To be honest, I work opposite these computer game company, and I talk to the programmer sometimes, and I have no idea. It still blows me away that I can press a button and a computer turns on.
Right.
Like, I like to feel like I'm quite a technical person. I can do things on the computer, but it still blows me away how it all works.
I mean, I don't think that goes away for people who know how to program, right? like, I've done a course in like literally how you build a computer from scratch, starting with like logic gates and then building up in top of that stuff. It's an open source course actually. It's called NAND to Tetris. So you start with a NAND gate, which is a type of logic gate, and then you work your way up to having your own virtual computer and building Tetris. I was only really interested in the building up to having the virtual computer part. I didn't really care about building Tetris, so I stopped there. But yeah, I mean, even knowing all that stuff, just still, it's just like, wow, it's amazing that all of this just works. It's still magical even to those who program.
Was it frustrating? No, I bet it was frustrating sometimes.
It depends on your attitude, right? Like I love puzzles, right? And so programming is like a puzzle to me. And so each new challenge is like, it's not frustrating because I'm like getting to figure out this thing. And so I really enjoy that. I mean, there are parts to it that can certainly still be frustrating when you're just like, I want this thing to connect to this other thing, but like, for whatever, reason, it just won't work the way that you want it to. That can be frustrating because like, if there's not really like a solution to it necessarily, like maybe just something doesn't have the capabilities that you need it to, that can be kind of frustrating. But for the most part, like you don't run into those issues too frequently.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. To approach something like that, like a game or a challenge or a puzzle. And I see that as with writing as well, like a literary puzzle. And my job is to find the perfect sequence of words. And
how these plot lines intersect and like the characters and how they're working together and their motivations and all of that stuff. I think that programming and writing has a lot in common, actually.
Yeah, there you go. Amazing. Yeah, great way the way you've linked it. And so now you've obviously been overseeing how everything's working. And I was curious, is there any sort of medium like group promos, newsletter swaps that you find or you've seen gets like the best results for authors?
No, it's highly dependent, right? So it depends on what the goal of the group promotion is, right?
Yeah.
So on StoryOrigin, you can have group promos. So we've been talking about reader magnets and building your mailing list a lot, but you can also have group promotions that are focused on driving sales by directing readers to your universal book links, or focused on reviews and driving readers to review copies of your book. And when I mention universal book links and review copies, you can actually do those for both your books and for your audiobooks on StoryOrigin. Nice. But the point being that you're going to see different performance based on what the goal is, right? Like the amount of people that you get that will subscribe to your newsletter to get your reader magnet when you're joining a group promotion is going to be much higher than the number of people that will request a review copy of your book if it's a part of a group promotion on StoryOrigin. Just because, like, if you think about the difference, like, I as a reader, if I'm getting a reader magnet or I'm getting a review copy, well, a reader magnet, all I need to do is sign up to this author's mailing list, and then I can sort of sample that reader magnet whenever I want. If I'm signing up to, or if I'm requesting a review copy from the author, that does actually require like a commitment that I'm going to read this and I'm going to review it. Or at least like I feel the commitment if not otherwise. Right. So the performance is of course going to depend on what the goal is. And then the performance will depend on also the number of authors in the group promotion. Definitely generally more authors in a group promotion, that group promotion is going to perform better because there are more authors driving traffic to it. But it also depends on the number of like the size of each person's list that is in that group promo too. So I can't say like, oh, this type of group promotion is always going to do better than this other type of group promotion. You might have two group promos that are like the same goal, same genre, but just have different authors in them, and so they're going to have different performance.
Yeah.
So it's always it's not a great answer, right? But
no, it's a hard question.
Depends, yeah.
Blame the question, not the answer. But you mentioned a few things there and other features that I quite like. Universal book links, because that is such a handy feature, especially now that we're dealing with a global audience, not like a localized or regionalized one. And I use ads and use universal book links, and that it's a great way. I can just target all these different countries, and yeah, fantastic.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of authors don't even necessarily know, but if your book is on sale on Amazon.com, it's not just like readers in the UK can get it. They get it from Amazon.co.uk, or if you're in Canada, Amazon.ca or .com.au in Australia. So Amazon has all of these different marketplaces, and they're all at different domains. And so being able to make sure that your readers are going to end up in the correct Amazon storefront for their country, you don't want to have to list 13 different links in your email, right? StoryOrigin, you can just create a universal book link for it and then drop that in your email. And then when they go to Amazon, it directs them to the correct storefront for their country specifically. And then you can also list the other retailers on that page where you have the book available. So Kobo, Google, Barnes and Noble, etc. Yeah,
that's a great little feature, because I've used in the past link creators that just link you to a single page,
right?
The storefront. Whereas on StoryOrigin, you can create the landing page, can't you, where you can navigate to all the different stores. Very good. So, have you got any other sort of developments, additions to StoryOrigin in the pipeline?
I've got one coming up, though I do like to play it close to the vest. So because I never know exactly the timeline on which I'm going to be able to get something out there. And this one is going to be kind of big feature. I mean, StoryOrigin, again, like my purpose has been sort of make every part of this process easier for authors. And so, yeah, I mean, I've got some cool stuff coming up in the pipeline, and I think that authors will really enjoy it. But yeah, I play a little bit close to the vest with what exactly that is.
That's a good way to do it.
I like to be a man of mystery.
So now you've sold me. I love StoryOrigin. As you've probably guessed. But to someone who may not have heard of it, and who's maybe a bit skeptical, what would you say to them now to sort of pique their interest and get them to have a little look?
So if you want to, you can join StoryOrigin. There's a free tier that you can use, and it has some helpful features. You won't be able to access, I would say on the free tier, it's really helpful if you bring your own audience. If you don't have your own audience for your stuff, then the free tier is not going to be super helpful. So you're going to want to be on the paid tier to, like, if you really want to like build your audience and expand and get more reviews and increase sales and all of that stuff. But StoryOrigin is sort of the one-stop shop to do all of that stuff. So you can, not have to worry about managing all of those different logins for a bunch of different services. And yeah, it just gets better over time too, right? It's something that I'm constantly working on in making better and improving. So if there's something that you don't like about it today, tomorrow it might be different and a little bit better, right?
Yeah, I'll just send Evan an email and he'll do it for you.
That's right. Yeah.
I know. Well, Evan, it's been so nice chatting with you, and really appreciate you coming on and just chatting a bit more about StoryOrigin and how it can help you. It's such a fantastic and simple tool, and it's not even expensive, is it?
No, it's $10 a month or $100 per year. Yeah. So it's definitely affordable.
I know, and if you're serious about your writing and building your mailing list, then it's such a shrewd investment. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, I would certainly say so as well, right? Especially when you're when you're thinking about, okay, I've got to figure out how to do all of these different things, and StoryOrigin can sort of help you along at every step of the process.
Yeah. How can we find out a bit more about StoryOrigin?
Yeah, so you can find StoryOrigin at StoryOriginApp.com. And yeah, you know, my email address is right there on the contact page. If anyone has questions, or certainly feel free to reach out to me directly.
Evan, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me on.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks very much for listening. And if you did enjoy this, please like and share, subscribe, follow, do all that jazz. Tell your friends, tell your writing buddies. And if there's any topics that you want us to cover, just drop us an email. I've also put a link to a more detailed article about StoryOrigin that I've recently published on my website. The link is there in the description too. And we'll be back in a little while with some more fantasy writing topics. Thanks very much for listening.